Vince County. KCHW 102.7. We are back live, 8:11 right now, and in the studio we have a very special guest. Of course, we want to throw out for our first break. We had Jean, and Daisy came in because she brought a very special friend with her. The return of Gloria Flora. Thank you for coming into the studios, Gloria, and good morning.
Good morning. My pleasure.
All right, try that again. Good morning.
Good morning. My pleasure to be here.
I'm a little slow on the draw. All right, Gloria, it's I've been talking yesterday. I had two hippies in the studio, and then today I had two hippies again, and now you're here. So I think it's like a three hippie day. So I actually prepared this. Is there three hippies?
Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
Three hippies in the studio. That's right. All right. Sorry. All right. So I had one thing I wanted to do. I want to turn it over to the girls just because they know a lot more about this than I do. But I wanted just for since we're on the webcam, a show of hands for which of you have made a tincture before. All right, I just wanted to prove that I had three hippies in the studio.
I have a feeling that we all have a cupboard full of them.
Of tinctures? I do. Yes, and I do through osmosis just from knowing you. All right. I know if there's a problem, I've got a salve for that. All right.
Good job, Scott. You're learning the words. I felt very honored when he was starting to get a cold this last winter, and he goes, all I did was just went and took your 2 tinctures. Man, it was gone.
Yeah, I love to hear that.
Yeah. And since I'm going up the tower today and there's lots of radiation, I got a rock for that.
I gave him shungite. So I gave him shungite rock. Yeah.
Well, and also you're going to be in allergy territory. So do you have some stinging nettle tincture?
I don't.
Oh,
I don't.
that's a good
You're gonna
thing
have
to
to hook
bring.
me up.
Yeah.
I need some local honey too because pollen's coming. So there.
Right.
All right, we went way off track already, and I'm sure it's going to happen again. But we want to find out, what are you leading with, Daisy?
So, Gloria Flora is a specialist in biochar, and I'm thinking that word biochar, what does that brings to mind? Charcoal and charcoal toothpaste, which I found out about a couple years ago, and now I started using it. It was really gross putting black stuff in your mouth, but it's really good for you. But anyway, biochar. Gloria, why don't you tell us what biochar is? Because Daisy doesn't really have a clue.
Biochar is a form of charcoal. Okay. So you're right on that one. But it's charcoal that's made with the intent to either repopulate it with biology or use it to remediate problems that are troubling biology.
Okay. Awesome. And how did you get involved with this biochar initiative?
Well, the first thing that happened to me is that I was reading an article by a woman named Kelpie Wilson, and she was writing about this biochar conference. I'm there, biochar, what on earth is that? Same reaction most people have. And once I started to learn about it, I was absolutely thrilled because I work a lot in forest management and natural resources. And so in forest restoration, when you're thinning forests, you tend to create a lot of biomass. And of course, some of the biomass, which is like the slash and limbs and twigs and leaves, some of it you really want to leave on the forest floor. That's very important for the nutrient cycle, to microclimate for young seedlings. So you don't want to take all of it off, but when you do forest restoration or even your traditional commercial forest harvest, you end up with a lot more than you need. And that's why we see these big piles out in the forest after a treatment has been made that are just huge, and they get burned. That's the traditional way of getting rid of biomass. But that's a lot of material, it's a lot of waste. So what I learned is that the charcoal that is produced naturally, through wildfire, grass fires, is actually really beneficial for the soil. And so if you make the char intentionally, but make it in a way to absolutely minimize the amount of smoke, and that's a big secret.
I actually had a chance of okay, so I lived in Thailand, and the Thais made their own charcoal.
Sure.
And they would put the wood underground in a hole and then cover it up.
Right.
And it was really cool. And a couple of days later, there you go, you got charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was minimal smoke.
And
Yeah.
and that's really what you want to try. Now, a lot of times the traditional way of making charcoal is putting it in like a kiln or covering it with wet leaves after you start a fire, and it tends to smoke for days. Well, you don't want that smoke released out into the air. You want as minimal as possible because there's greenhouse gases in there, there's particulate matter, and so it's hard on our lungs, it's hard on the lungs of the planet. So I got excited about this because here was a wonderful way to make charcoal on purpose, and so utilizing a waste, turning it into a resource, and then the biochar is absolutely magical in what it can do. It's primarily carbon, and it's the when you look at it under a microscope, there's a lot of little pores. It's very, very porous, and so it acts almost like a sponge. Not that it absorbs with a B, which means it's like that sucks it in and becomes part of it, but it adsorbs, which means materials, especially water and nutrients, adhere to its surface, and so it holds it there. And when you put it in the soil, it attracts and holds nutrients and water, and also provides habitat for microbes and bacteria, mycelia, and so it kind of draws all these positive things to it. Root hairs come in contact with the char, and basically what they find is a little trading post there. They find all these minerals and nutrients that they need, and the mycelia and the bacteria want to trade minerals for nutrients.
Wow.
And so
it has the yin and the yang both.
Exactly.
It's absorbing and adding in.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. So because of my work, it kind of hit right in the nexus of my concern about a cleaner environment, my concern about what to do with forest waste, and also how to build soils and how to create sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And the other thing is it's carbon. And so when you put it back in the soil, it sequesters carbon. And it stays in the soil for hundreds to thousands of years. So it really is a way to take carbon out of the active cycle and put it in the carbon dioxide out of the active cycle and put it in the inactive cycle.
I haven't. Do you have any questions?
Oh no, I'm
Okay,
just
great.
sitting here
I
like
just
totally
wanted to
absorbing
make sure I'm
myself
not-
here.
okay. I was wondering exactly how you're doing this here, like say locally. How is this working as far as the biochar? Are you making it? Are you just encouraging people to get involved and make biochar, or how is this working locally? I guess. Okay, I just want to take it into a practical level
absolutely.
where people can get it.
So after I learned about biochar, I thought, well, surely when people learn about this, it's just going to sweep the nation, and people get all excited. And there was an international biochar initiative organization promoting the education and information about biochar, but there wasn't anything in the U.S. So I started the U.S. Biochar Initiative to promote the sustainable production and use of biochar.
Now, is that a nonprofit?
Yes, it is.
It is a nonprofit. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's the Biochar Initiative.
It's the U.S. Biochar Initiative,
Okay.
and
Awesome.
that's easily found on the web with biochar-us.org.
Wow.
So. But locally, what I'm doing, I started the U.S. Biochar Initiative in 2009, and I was the executive director of that until 2016, but I was also the director of my own nonprofit.
You have a lot going on, Gloria. We know.
So I had too much to do,
Yes.
and so I encouraged someone else to take the reins, and they have, and it's going great. But I do a lot of workshops about biochar. I do talks about biochar. I demonstrate how to make biochar. I sell biochar cone kilns, which is a real simple way to make biochar. So and I use biochar for many, many things.
I was out at your place last year, and you showed me how you make the biochar right there. So, and so you when you make it with the least amount of smoke, is it underground, like I mentioned? How did the Thais do it?
No, there is a similar technique to what you're talking about, but the way that I make it usually is two methods. One, either in my biochar cone kiln, which is just a simple cone-shaped metal structure, which helps contain the materials, keep it tightly together, and makes it easy to to manage, and or I just burn it in a pile. But the secret for burning in a pile, like a regular slash pile, something that you'd pile up with debris from your yard, the secret is that you top light it. The top lighting means that you put a lot of fine materials right up on top of the pile, and sometimes I'll do the easy way. I'll just take a little cardboard box, shove it full of kindling and paper, and put it on top of the pile and toss a match on it. By that time, the heat is high enough that what it does is it's driving the volatile gases out of the biomass, out of the wood, and it's really those gases that burn more so than the solid material itself. So when those gases come out, if you light it on the bottom, you see them escape as smoke. But if you light it on the top, those gases are drawn back into the flame, and so you're burning the gases. The gas is carbon monoxide, methane, hydrogen, things that you just rather not.
They're not good.
Yeah.
Well, and top lighting makes fires actually burn longer and hotter,
Yes.
without using as much of the physical fuel.
Yes.
So yeah, that
Excellent.
makes total sense. Okay. I mean, because that's what we want to do in, situations where we want a fire to last for a long time. When we're camping, you top light it. But now that makes total sense as to,
Right.
wow.
And so as it's burning, you're watching it, you're tending it, and when you see the charcoal starting to form, you begin pulling that out with a rake. And you can spritz it with water to cool it down faster. When it starts to form the white coating, that's ash. You don't really want a lot of ash, and so you want to keep those charcoal embers cooling down. And so you get kind of spread out, not hugely, but what you end up with is a huge pile of charcoal at the end instead of just ash.
And the ash is acidic, correct?
Well,
No, because the Thais would say that they would sprinkle ash on plants as a fertilizer, but they said not to put too much because it's acidic.
No, it's
that
actually basic.
Basic? Okay.
And that's another thing that biochar can do for soils is it raises the pH of soils.
Right.
It actually does an incredible number of things in soil. Like I said, attract and hold nutrients. It creates habitat for microbes and mycelia. It raises the pH. It sequesters carbon. And the list goes on.
That would explain why a lot of our forests in today's society are so unhealthy, is because we have prevented nature from burning itself off and creating a healthier environment and renewing itself, because we stop those fires that we are causing problems and causing the unhealthy forest, because that is not happening in that natural cycle.
That's certainly a contributor. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the fire cycles, that's a whole nother
we talked
topic.
about that last time.
A
It
whole
was
nother
amazing.
topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So as far as in the Forestry Coalition, do you involve the Biochar initiative with what you're doing with your groundwork with the Forestry Coalition? Is that or is that not quite there yet?
It's tangential. When in the Northeast Washington Forest Coalition, we do a lot of the planning work, and the design, and on the implementation end, when we're out in the forest, examining what we've been doing and monitoring what's going on, the results of what we see. I do talk a lot about top lighting slash piles, and piling in a way that facilitates the achieving more charcoal out of the burn, and people are getting interested in it.
Okay, so that's just wondering if they're taking your expertise and making it happen. That's sort
I'm
of
always proselytizing.
So that would explain why, within a few years after a slash pile has been burned, you start seeing a massive amount of different types of mycelium growing around it, different types of mushrooms and popping up around it. Okay.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm already thinking all this warm weather.
Want to go get mushrooms.
So is this something that can be broken up into pieces and used in compost?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, after you make the char, it's basically kind of sterile. It doesn't have a lot of nutrients.
Oh, yeah,
it's
because
looking
the
for
heat
them.
kills everything.
Well, yeah, so you don't have a lot of biology instantly associated with it. You have a great physical structure, you have great carbon content, but you really want to repopulate that with some nutrients, and before you put it in the soil, because when you put it in the soil, if your soil is already pretty poor, it's going to draw the nutrients to it and not allow the plants to have it right away. It doesn't make it bioavailable until it gets charged, if you will, to a certain extent. And so once it's charged, then it's fabulous for plants. But in that interim, you actually give your soil a boost if you charge the char first. And what that means is you just expose it to nutrients. You want to expose it to light and water for a little while, leave it in the rain, leave it sit out, which oxidizes the surfaces, which makes it even more of a magnet. And so, but when you're making compost, it's not a substitute for compost. It's a companion for compost, because compost is materials that break down really quickly and release a lot of nutrients kind of in a surge. If you mix char in your compost, you're capturing those that nutrients that are leaking out or going to the bottom of the pile. I always say your best soil is directly underneath your compost pile. And so
That's where all the worms are.
If you put a layer of char, worms do love char, by the way. You put a layer of char down and then start to build your compost and putting layers in, then keep throwing char in periodically, up to 10% by volume. You can go 15% by volume of char. Then you have char that has all these nutrients in it. It's also dark, and so it creates more radiant, or it absorbs heat from the sun because it's black.
So it's going to make that compost go even more.
Absolutely. It holds water, and so it keeps your compost more moist. And then when you put it in your soil, the compost will disappear in a year or two, but the char never breaks down.
And it's still got all those nutrients in it, and it's like a slow release.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that is amazing. It's an amazing product, and something I think we all should be using and doing. Speaking of, if I had a farm, say, of a grape, or say I'm growing grapes, or I have an orchard, some kind of fruit farm, how would I fertilize, and when, and how would a farmer determine how to use it?
Okay, you can use it in a couple of different ways. One is if you're tilling your soil. I mean, we're not. I'm kind of a no-till person, but you can use when you use a seed. If you use no-till methods, you still use a seed drill, which cuts a slit in the soil and drops the seeds in. You can actually mix the char in with the seeds, so you're dropping the char right in with the seed. Or if you're that
makes sense.
If
Chilling?
If you're a gardener, you can throw it in by the handful. You can mix it in. If you're actually tilling, you can really put it on the soil, fairly heavy dose. Actually, 10 tons per acre.
10 tons per acre.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's
that is amazing.
Lot.
That is a lot.
How amazing.
Yeah, it's well, when we look at soils, for instance, in the Midwest, our prairie soils they're dark, rich black. That's because of all the char in it. And all those prairie fires, it's not the grass tops that turns to ash when it burns, but it's the root crowns of the grasses, and that's what chars, because it doesn't, the fires aren't hot enough, long enough to really make it go to ash.
Because they just sweep through quickly.
Yeah, so it's bits of char, and it keeps dropping into the soil over millions of years, literally, and has created this fabulously dark soil, which is extremely rich in nutrients. So
it sounds like biochar is kind of outdoing manure, or do you still use manure as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'd say it'd be a great hand in hand with it.
Okay.
They
composting the manure with it.
Yeah, because manure or anything that you compost, you want it kind of soft, something that'll break down fairly quickly. So what I say is anything that you can't compost or doesn't compost fast enough, you can probably make char out of it. If it's sufficiently dry, you can just
Sure.
you can turn it into char.
All the
And
clippings and
it can
things
even
like that.
it can even be dried manure. I mean, you can you can use just about anything except municipal waste. I mean, the trash. No, you don't want to do that because there's things in the trash that just you do not want in the soil. You can. There's even been experiments with waste from sewage treatment plants, and I kind of discourage that because we're kind of walking hazmat units with, and so there could be heavy metals, there could be pharmaceuticals that are retained in waste. Then you also, you're adding another process. It's already been processed once, and one of the things that we always want to consider in sustainability is how many times we process something, how much energy we put into creating something. It's called energy return on energy invested. And once you create something, or once you process something once, you've got a lot of invested energy in that. Right. So do you really need to do that to put more energy into it?
Yeah.
I've got a question. When you're talking about the nutrients you're adding to the soil this way, what is your opinion of things that are typically sold to people to do those commercially? Because we're talking about chemicals and not putting trash in your biochar because of the toxins that could then put into the soil. So what's your opinion on what we put into the soil? And I'll just pick one that's simple because you buy them and you'll stick them in your plant and it makes it flower. Miracle-Gro. What's really in that? And should you be putting it on your? I've wondered. Like when I've had little gardens or tried one before. Can I put Miracle-Gro on these plants? And I never did because it just it's like mystery juice, I guess. I don't know.
And it smells like dead fish.
Yeah. So just without throwing yourself under the bus in any way, what do you have to say about those kind of things?
Okay, so we're talking about chemical fertilizers.
Yes.
We look back at it through the lens of sustainability. A lot of those chemical fertilizers are made using petroleum products. A lot of them are made using chemicals that are not found in nature. Chemicals that are toxic to perhaps honeybees or other soil microbes or to us. And most chemicals have not been tested fully. Only about 8 to 10% of the chemicals that we use and have available to us have not been tested. Or only 8 to 10 have been tested. And then also they haven't been tested in relationship to each other. And one really startling example is Manab, which is a common fungicide, when mixed with paraquat, which is a common herbicide. So if someone wants to go, well, I'm going to take care of the fungus, I'm going to take care of what's, the herbs, the herbaceous growth I don't want, and mix the two, in mice they cause Parkinson's disease. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be concerned that
they could do it
to us.
So people that are trying to kill the fungus in their yards and then trying to kill the weeds could possibly, be causing themselves.
Killing themselves.
Yeah,
basically.
And so I am not an advocate of chemicals.
I didn't think you were, but I wanted to hear the philosophy behind it and that kind of stuff.
But that said, biochar can be used with chemical fertilizers. I mean, it will pick up the good, and actually it might be beneficial because it will filter out a lot of the bad. That's another use of biochar is for remediation. It can remediate, it's particularly good in remediating acid mine drainage because it is so basic. I was talking about the pH. It's a high pH, whereas acid drainage is a very low pH. It can be as low as 3 or 2.5. And it picks up heavy metals. So one of the fun things that's being done with biochar right now is in the city of Spokane, it's being used in median planting. On Country Homes Road, the medium there that they removed the concrete culvert and put in all those landscaping plants.
It is
exactly.
I was wondering how they were keeping it so green.
They put in a lot. Well, it gets a lot of water, draining off the road, but they put biochar in that soil too, and they have reduced the excuse me, the amount of lead and PCBs and copper that's coming out of the stormwater because of the biochar.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe we should be lining that along our highways.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't think people realize for a second, not to get off topic, but every city in America, we see storm drains all the time, but we don't think where our damn storm drains are going. And they go to the closest creek. So every bit of oil that leaks off your car, antifreeze, everything that's coming off our nasty automobiles goes to the closest creek. And it's wrong.
Right.
Exactly. And so the promise for stormwater drainage filtration with biochar is absolutely huge. There's actually been a number of tests done over in the port of Port Townsend, because there's all these old galvanized metal buildings. They leak a lot of copper and their lead. And a friend of mine, John Miedema, who's just a biochar wizard, has created these combination sand trap biochar traps, and they're running the drainage that comes off these roofs from these old buildings, and they're picking up about 97% of the copper and about I think it's 80% of the lead. No, 90% of the lead. So you're picking up all these heavy metals before they get to the fish, and copper is absolutely deadly on fish. So the port just doesn't want all this copper draining in, or as you were saying, Steve or Scott.
It's all right.
Sorry,
it's all right.
I always do. Anyhow. If you can intercept these metals before they get into the water, and the other thing that we don't think about very much is the heavy metals that are in our automobile tires. And so as the tires are rubbing against the road as they go, they're spewing off little particles of heavy metals. And Portland right now, the city of Portland, is really interested in putting biochar all along the interstates and in the interstate exchanges, interchanges where you've got these basically basins of soil, and they're just capturing all this heavy metal stuff and toxins.
Yeah.
And so they want to put biochar in there. Now, once you use biochar for remediation, if you don't have it contained in some way, like in a sock or a mat or a burlap bag, you can't get it back out of the soil. So it's in there, but it's going to hold as much as those toxins and heavy metals as it can.
Well, that reminds me of the Brita filters or any of your water filtration filters. It's probably just charcoal in there filtering through. I think I've seen it.
What they put in filters for like aquariums and water filters is called activated charcoal. And really what it is charcoal that has had the surfaces activated. And what that means is it's just been cleaned of dust and particles. But they also, and they can do that with steam, but they also sometimes use chemicals to activate the charcoal. Activated charcoal is a very, very popular item, very useful. Not so useful when they're using chemicals on it, to activate it. But you can rinse biochar and basically use it the same way that you would use activated charcoal. You just have to use a little more of it.
So I could just take a piece of charcoal and start brushing my teeth with it?
Oh, actually, well, you laugh, but
I put the powder, and the powder is really annoying because I end up almost and it's like,
no. So here's the trick, Daisy.
I know I need to make a paste out of it, and I just haven't done it. I'm
sort of don't just take your regular toothpaste.
Yeah, I'm just being silly. I think it gave me an idea though. Yeah, because my regular toothpaste is orange flavored, and I'm like, I don't like it, and I need.
Yeah, just you take your regular toothpaste, put it on your brush, dip your brush into a biochar powder or powdered biochar, and brush your teeth as usual. I wouldn't do it every day. I do this, but I only use it 4 or 5 times a week because it's pretty abrasive, But there's a couple of things that are going on. It's not just the scrubbing power, which is great, but because it has the ability to attract things. A residue of it will remain in your mouth even if you rinse, and it will attract bacteria. And so when it's there along the edges of your gums, and I will admit that I was not being regular with my dental visits, like 6 years, and the hygienist that was cleaning my teeth said it looked like my teeth, like I had been to a dentist maybe 6 months ago, that it took away the plaque. And so it's...
I noticed that my enamel feels better, like stronger or something. It does something to the enamel.
I don't know that it does.
That's what I feel when after.
It certainly makes your
it.
mouth feel cleaner.
Yeah.
But it's fun because you see all kinds of cosmetics now. There's charcoal face mask and charcoal for your hair. But it's not just a fad or something. But because of that ability to attract and absorb, if you put it on your face, it's going to pull out impurities out of your pores. So
cool.
Now, another use that I heard somebody talking about recently that I was really interested in, because I'm wanting to do off-grid, but be as kind to lower my carbon footprint as much as possible, but reuse resources as much as possible. And one of those ideas that we discussed was taking your gray water, as long as you make sure you don't use any chemically based soaps and things like that, taking your gray water and running it through a charcoal system, and then taking that and using that to then either flush your toilets, which you wouldn't need to for that, but it can be used to water your gardens.
Absolutely.
And I thought that's like the coolest way to reuse everything. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to wash dishes with a homemade soap, and by the way, I'm now providing water for my garden, and you shower, and it's the same thing. And I thought that was like the coolest, one of the coolest ways to reuse for people who may not have a whole lot of water available. That's like getting the best bang for, not your buck, but for nature,
Absolutely.
And I just thought, well, that would be, and I'm sitting here thinking, geeking out on my brain going, all these things that I could do, and these systems, these container systems that I could do where water goes into this one and then into that one, and then it could go out into my garden. And
awesome, Jean. Hippie geek.
Oh, I know.
They got a new one there.
Yes. I'm sitting here just going, whoa.
Oh, yeah. When you start to play with charcoal, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. There's actually been 55 uses cataloged for biochar.
Wow.
So you're like the perfect person to ask this. I have thought about doing water collection, rainwater collection. Now, would that then be drinkable if I ran it through one of these systems that had the biochar in it?
Yes, but I would test it first.
That's what I figured.
I would feel very confident, as long as your roof was relatively clean, But there's a lot of things in the air, particulates, and so we're getting.
So the first rain at the end of summer is not a good idea to collect.
No, the first rains there's. In more sophisticated rainwater collection systems, the first 5 to 10 minutes of rain, whatever a certain volume comes off, is actually discarded. And so it's kind of the pre-rinse, of your roof. That gets discarded, or used. So
just basically have a shut-off valve that you can just go and open after so long.
Yeah, but again, I would, I can say yes rather blithely because I eat dirt. I'm not the germaphobe at all. But I would definitely test it. But I would feel more confident drinking that than I would, just from a random source, or even some of the cities I've been in.
Yeah. So, Gloria, one more question here. Do you have any workshops coming up that people can attend?
I don't have any scheduled.
Okay.
But I will tell you that just recently the Washington State Legislature has passed a biochar memorial bill, and what that means is that it is a bill that's memorializing the legislature's support of biochar, and particularly biochar research as it relates to carbon sequestration. Nice. And that just got passed thanks to Carbon Washington. And another event that's coming up that I did want to mention that's very tangentially related is a free film on Friday night called Rancher, Farmer, Fisherman, and it's based on a book written by Miriam Horn, and it's about collaboration, and specifically collaboration that stewards, our traditional stewards of the land and sea, our ranchers, our farmers, our fishermen, saw a lot of resource damage and impacting their way of life, and they wanted to do something about it, so they started to collaborate with conservationists and people in their communities and discovered that, wow, I can have a sustainable farming system, ranching system, and fishing system if I'm taking care of the resources. And so biochar is part of the way we take care of resources. So
that's pretty cool. So they can find you at it was the U.S. what again?
I've got our website and stuff right here.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Gloria, if people want more information, we got to wrap this up. I got to get on the road. How should people get a hold of you? Do you want them to come through Facebook or your website?
I do have a Facebook page, Northeast Washington Biochar Group, I think. The Biochar website, biochar-us.org, it has a lot of resources that explain what biochar is, from very, very basic to very advanced.
And if you just Google your name, there is so much. I Googled your name while you guys were talking, and I'm like, wow. And one of the first things that popped up was biochar.
Okay.
And the website you're talking about.
Cool.
You also have a website, Sustainable Obtainable Solutions, easy to find. But there's tons of stuff and photos of you everywhere. You are
a superstar. We were just talking about meeting somebody famous, and I was definitely going to.
Yeah, now we have. All right. I hate to cut you short because I know the girls could have kept going with this for at least another hour. So, so I feel bad. But
there's no way to stop on biochar.
All right. So we've got
do a demo.
We'll have you in again and permaculture. And thanks for coming in, because this was perfect, because this is kind of like Earth Week for Chewil. We had Earth Day. This is a great tie-in, and then we have our citywide cleanup coming up this weekend from the chamber.
Good.
And so thank you so much for coming in this week and sharing.
My
with
pleasure.
us.
Thank you, Gloria.
I feel so bad. Once again, big round of
so
applause.
much.
Girls help out. Gloria Flora. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's our show for today. We will be back at 7:15 tomorrow. Sorry for cutting things short. We got to fix that tower, though, and get back up to full power. It's KCHW 102.7. Be nice to each other and have an awesome day.